All right, let's jump right in.
Feels good to me.
Today we're tackling a figure who pretty much everyone knows in Australian history.
Yeah.
Ned Kelly.
Big name.
Outlaw. Folk hero. I mean...
Who is he?
Yeah, exactly, right? Who is he? We're going to use all the sources you gave us to try and figure that out.
Right.
Going way beyond just those easy labels everyone puts on him.
It's amazing how, even over a century after his death,
I know, right?
people are still arguing about him.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And we've got so much to look at today.
Yeah.
We've got historical accounts, we've got articles, we've even got some of his own writing to dive into. It's going to be fascinating.
Looking forward to.
So our mission today is to try and cut through all those myths.
Right.
Really get to the heart of who this guy actually was.
Okay.
And trust me, it's way more complicated than just good guy or bad guy.
I bet.
So before we even get into it, I'm curious, what do you already know about Ned Kelly? Like, what comes to mind when you hear that name?
I think, for me, what comes to mind is someone who's really misunderstood.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that's what makes him so fascinating.
Yeah, for sure.
But to understand Ned Kelly, I think you got to understand the world he was born into.
Right.
So let's picture Australia in the 1800s.
Okay.
You've got this vast outback.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's untamed.
Untamed is a great word.
And you've got all these tensions brewing
Oh, yeah.
between, like, the poor settlers who are trying to make a living.
Right, right.
And then you have the wealthy landowners. They control most of the land.
It's always about the land, isn't it?
Always about the land.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, it was like a powder keg just waiting to explode.
Oh, great analogy.
Yeah, totally.
So that's the world Ned Kelly enters.
Okay, so that's the backdrop, right? We've got the setting.
Right.
Now enter Ned Kelly.
So he's born in 1854
Okay.
to Irish immigrants.
Okay.
And his early life is just, it's marked by poverty and hardship.
Right.
I mean, imagine losing your father at 12. Oh, God.
And having to become the breadwinner for your family.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
That's the kind of experience that shapes a person, you know?
Totally. I mean, talk about responsibility thrust upon you way too young.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so he's dealing with a lot already.
Right.
Then his family moves to Greta,
Yeah.
which in one of the sources here is described as a lawless outpost,
Yeah.
which almost sounds like it's like foreshadowing what's to come, right?
Oh, yeah, like fate was almost pushing him towards a life of crime, wouldn't you say?
Right. Yeah, yeah. It's like, how could he not be, you know?
Exactly.
And then on top of that,
Yeah.
young Ned ends up being apprenticed to a bushranger
Yeah.
named Harry Power.
Harry Power, yeah.
For anyone who might not know,
Right.
a bushranger was basically an outlaw, right?
Right. Living and operating out in the Australian bush.
Hiding from the law.
Robbing folks, evading the law.
So, you know, we've got poverty, we've got this really rough environment,
Yeah.
and now we've got this criminal mentorship happening.
Yeah. I mean, you can really see how these things would all start to add up and play a role in shaping him, right?
Absolutely.
But I guess the question is, was he always destined to become an outlaw?
I mean, who knows, right? It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
But one thing's for certain.
Yeah.
The incident that really made Ned Kelly famous,
Okay.
or infamous, I guess you could say,
Right.
was the Fitzpatrick incident of 1878.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this one.
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay, let's hear about it.
All right, so you have this policeman named Alexander Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
He shows up at the Kelly homestead
Oh.
to arrest Ned's brother, Dan.
Okay.
And this is where the stories start to get kind of murky.
Yeah, right.
You got Fitzpatrick claiming that Ned shot him.
Okay.
And the Kelly family is insisting that Ned wasn't even there.
Two completely different stories.
Like, what really happened?
Right.
They may never know the full truth.
Yeah, so what does that tell us then? When you have these two completely different versions of events, I mean, it makes you wonder who to believe, right?
Yeah, it does.
And I think it highlights just how hard it is to separate fact from fiction when it comes to Ned Kelly.
Yeah.
There's so much myth and legend surrounding him.
Right.
It's almost impossible to know what really happened.
It's like you said earlier, he's misunderstood. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
But regardless of what truly went down that day,
Okay.
the impact of this incident, it was huge.
Yeah, because I can't imagine the authorities just took that lightly.
No, they did not.
Right.
They came down hard on the Kellys.
Yeah, okay.
Ned's mother,
Yeah.
she's sentenced to hard labor.
Oh, wow.
3 years.
For what?
For allegedly aiding in the attempted murder of Fitzpatrick.
Oh, wow. So they really went all in on her.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah.
The anger, the resentment.
And that would fuel anyone.
Yeah, it would make anyone mad.
So he's already...
Especially someone who already distrusts authority.
Right. Exactly. Like,
This just solidifies his belief that the system is rigged against him.
like I told you.
Against his family.
You can't trust anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a major turning point.
It feels like everything just changed in that moment.
Everything changed.
Yeah.
Ned and Dan, they become fugitives.
Right.
And they form this gang.
The Kelly gang.
The infamous Kelly gang.
And what's their first move after all this goes down?
Well, they decide they got to go into hiding.
Okay.
But they know the police are on their trail.
Right.
So they set up an ambush.
Oh, wow.
At a place called Stringybark Creek.
Okay.
For the police that are tracking them.
Okay.
And it turns into a shootout.
Okay.
And 3 officers are killed.
Wow.
It's a turning point.
Yeah, that really escalates things in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, up to that point, he's this folk hero in the making to some people.
Right.
But to others, he's this dangerous criminal.
Of course. Yeah.
And this incident, it just intensifies those feelings.
Yeah, so you've got people who are even more convinced he's like this Robin Hood figure.
Right.
And then you've got other people who are like, no, he's a cold-blooded killer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even before the Kelly gang really gets going,
right,
the lines are drawn.
But they're not done yet, are they?
No, they're just getting started.
Oh, this is...
The Kelly gang.
Yeah.
They rob banks in Euroa and Geraldry.
Okay.
But these aren't your average bank robberies.
Oh. What do you mean? What makes them different?
They're not just after the money.
Right.
They're also burning mortgage documents.
What? Why would they do that?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
They're essentially wiping out the debts of all these struggling farmers.
Oh, wow. This
is where we start to see that Robin Hood element come into play.
Right, yeah.
Kelly's positioning himself as a champion of the poor, fighting against the banks.
And the system.
The financial institutions that are squeezing the life out of ordinary people.
I love that.
So it's not just about personal gain.
Right.
It's about striking a blow against the system.
Yeah.
That he sees as unjust.
It's like he's using crime to achieve social justice in a weird way.
Yeah, it's kind of a twisted form of social justice, wouldn't you say?
Totally. Yeah, like he's a criminal, right?
Right.
But he's also fighting for these people who are being oppressed by the system.
And think about it from the perspective of one of those farmers.
Yeah.
Struggling to make ends meet, facing foreclosure.
Yeah, they're desperate.
Yeah. And along comes Ned Kelly, steals from the bank.
Yeah.
But then also destroys the evidence of your debt.
Like, you're free.
You're free.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I can totally see why people would start to view him as a hero, even though he's also doing all these illegal things.
Absolutely.
It's so interesting.
And there are even accounts.
Oh, is there more?
Yeah, there are even accounts of the Kelly gang just being generous.
Really? Like outside of the bank robberies?
Outside the robberies.
Oh.
Like sharing their loot with the poor, giving money back to some of the people they robbed.
No way.
It's this strange mix of ruthlessness and compassion.
What a story.
Yeah.
So even at this point, it's, like you said, he defies categorization.
Yeah.
He's both a criminal and he's doing these things that seem like good deeds.
He's a complicated figure.
So complicated.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see where it goes from here.
Oh, just wait. It gets even more interesting. Oh, yeah. The story's not over yet.
Like a movie, right?
Totally.
Robbing banks, burning mortgage documents, fighting the police.
Yeah.
It's wild.
I mean, all good things must come to an end.
Well, or all bad things, I guess, in this case, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So what happens next? What's the end of the line for the Kelly gang?
Well, their final act was maybe their most dramatic.
Okay.
It's the Glenrowan standoff of 1880.
Oh, yeah. This is the one where they wear that homemade armor, right?
That's the one.
Yeah. Okay, tell me about that.
So they knew they couldn't outrun the law forever. A confrontation with the police was inevitable.
Yeah.
So they decided to make their last stand
at
a hotel in Glenrowan, Victoria.
Okay.
And they came prepared.
Prepared how?
They had suits of armor.
What?
Made from plow mold boards.
You're kidding?
No, I'm serious.
Oh, wow.
It was a pretty bold move. A little desperate, too.
I can't even imagine.
But it shows how determined they were.
Right.
To fight to the very end.
Oh, like, what did the police even think when they saw these guys?
They must have been shocked.
Coming out in full armor. That's wild.
Totally.
So what happened next?
Well, of course, a big shootout happened.
Oh, right.
It was a fierce battle.
Yeah.
But the Kelly gang was outgunned, outnumbered.
Yeah.
And their luck finally ran out.
Okay.
The hotel caught fire.
Oh, no.
And all the gang members were killed.
Oh, wow.
Except for Ned.
He survived. How?
His armor protected him.
From all the bullets?
Most of his body.
Yeah.
But his legs were exposed.
Right.
He was captured.
Oh, wow.
Badly wounded.
That's crazy.
And ultimately, he was sentenced to death.
Oh, wow.
What a life.
What a life.
Full of drama.
Yeah.
And his last words, reportedly, such is life.
It's so chilling, but it kind of fits.
Right, after everything he went through.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It's almost become this iconic phrase.
Yeah.
Capturing this acceptance of fate.
Right, yeah.
But even in death, I mean, Ned
Yeah.
Kelly just couldn't escape controversy.
It's true. People still argue about him today.
It's over a century later.
Yeah.
Hero or villain.
Why do you think that is? Why is he still such a divisive figure after all this time?
You know, I think it's because his story,
Yeah.
it taps into something deeper, something that goes way beyond.
Yeah.
Just like the facts of his crimes.
Okay.
Or his rebellion.
Yeah.
It's like he embodies these contradictions
Yeah.
that exist within all of us.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, we're all capable of good and bad.
Right.
Of compassion and cruelty. It's right. And we struggle with these questions.
Yeah, all the time.
Right and wrong. What to do.
Right.
Do you follow the rules or do you fight for what you believe in?
Oh, yeah.
Ned Kelly just took these struggles to the extreme.
Right.
And that's what makes him so fascinating.
I can definitely see that.
So when we talk about the hero narrative versus the villain narrative.
Right. We touched on that a bit earlier.
Yeah.
Can we break those down a bit more? Like, what are the key elements of each one?
Okay, so the hero narrative.
Yeah.
It sees Ned Kelly as a champion of the poor.
Okay.
Someone who stood up to the corrupt authorities.
Right.
The wealthy landowners, you know, the ones with all the power.
Right, yeah.
He's a symbol of Irish-Australian resistance.
Right, against British colonialism.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's the Robin Hood aspect.
Right, stealing from the rich, giving to the poor.
That's the one.
And the Geraldry letter really plays into this hero narrative.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, this is like this 56-page handwritten document.
That's a lot of writing.
It is.
Wow.
That he hands to a bank teller.
During a robbery.
During a robbery.
What?
And he demands that it be published.
He's like, get this out there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's his way of setting the record straight.
Right. Like, this is my side of the story.
Exactly.
It's not just me being a criminal for no reason.
He wants people to understand why he's doing what he's doing.
So it's a really powerful document.
It is.
And it's easy to see how this would resonate with people.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially those who felt like the system was working against them.
Yeah, the ones who felt disenfranchised, forgotten.
Right.
They see themselves in Ned Kelly.
And it's like he's speaking for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's why the hero narrative, it's so enduring.
Right.
It appeals to that sense of fairness.
Yeah.
That desire to see the underdog win.
Right.
We all want to root for the underdog.
It's a good story.
It's a classic story.
Yeah. So, but then there's the villain narrative.
Right.
And I think that's the one that a lot of people kind of like go to first when they think of him.
Right.
So what fuels that perspective?
Well, the villain narrative, it focuses on the facts, the cold, hard facts.
Okay.
And the fact is, Ned Kelly was a killer.
Right. He killed those police officers.
Yeah, 3 policemen.
Yeah.
And that's not something you can just ignore.
Right.
Or justify.
Yeah. And even if you can kind of understand why he did the things he did, you can't just brush aside the fact that people died.
People died. Families were destroyed.
Yeah, it's true. It's a really difficult thing to reconcile.
It is.
And the villain narrative really focuses on that, right?
It does.
Yeah.
It says he was a ruthless killer.
Yeah.
Who terrorized communities.
Right.
And he deserves no sympathy.
And that's a valid point.
It is.
Right. I mean, every action has consequences.
Absolutely.
And his actions caused a lot of pain.
So much pain.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just saying, oh, he was fighting for a just cause, so it's okay.
No, it's not that simple.
Right. He crossed a line.
He did.
And a lot of people feel very strongly that he should be held accountable for that.
And they're right.
Regardless of what his motivations were.
Regardless of his motivations.
Yeah. So it's tough.
So we have these two sides.
Yeah.
How do we reconcile them?
It's a good question. And I feel like it almost embodies the contradictions of Australian history itself, right?
Exactly.
This young nation trying to find its identity.
Trying to figure out who they are.
Right.
And wrestling with all these issues.
Yeah.
Class, power, justice.
It's all there in his story.
It's all right there.
Yeah.
Ned Kelly is a mirror.
Reflecting all of it.
Reflecting the complexities of Australian history and society.
That's a great way to put it.
And I think he forces us to look at some uncomfortable truths about our past.
Yeah.
And to grapple with those
Yeah.
moral ambiguity.
Yeah. For sure.
that surround those who challenge the system.
I mean, he's a cultural Rorschach test.
That's perfect.
Right. Like, we see what we want to see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We see in him what resonates with our own values.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Our own beliefs.
So is it even possible then, do you think,
Yeah.
to reconcile the hero and the villain?
I think maybe the key is to just accept that both narratives,
Yeah.
they both have some truth to them.
Okay.
Ned Kelly was a complex figure,
Absolutely. Yeah.
capable of great violence,
Yeah.
but also seemingly genuine kindness.
He's all there.
It's all there.
Yeah.
He was a product of his time
Right.
and the circumstances he was born into.
Totally. Yeah.
But he also made choices.
Right.
And those choices had consequences.
Did consequences.
Huge consequences.
So it's not about picking a side.
No.
It's about recognizing that he was both.
Yeah.
He was a hero and a villain.
That duality.
Yeah.
That's what keeps people talking about him.
I think so too. Yeah. And I think that's what makes his story so fascinating, even after all these years.
Absolutely. Yeah. It really is a story for the ages.
It really is. I mean, it's incredible how a figure like Ned Kelly can still be sparking debate, and making us think after all these years.
And inspiring art, you know.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I want to talk about now. It's like his impact on Australian culture is undeniable.
It really is.
You see him everywhere.
Everywhere.
So why do you think that is?
Well, one thing that I find really fascinating is how Kelly's image
Okay.
has been used and reinterpreted over the decades.
Okay.
And it often reflects, like, the social and political anxieties of the time.
That's really interesting. So it's like he's almost like a cultural barometer, wouldn't you say?
I think
Like reflecting back the values, concerns of Australian society at different points in time.
Precisely, yeah.
That's really cool.
So like in the early 20th century, you know, when Australia was still kind of finding its footing as a nation.
Right. It's still fairly new on the world stage.
Yeah, exactly. Kelly was often portrayed as just a villain, straight up.
Okay.
Like symbol of lawlessness, threat to social order, that kind of thing.
Right. Got to maintain that order.
Yeah.
But then as Australia matured and kind of developed its own sense of national identity, you see this shift happening.
Yeah.
Right?
Total.
And suddenly Ned Kelly's not such a bad guy anymore.
No, he's not.
We talked earlier about how he became this symbol of Irish-Australian resistance against British colonialism.
Yeah, and that theme really gained traction in the mid-20th century.
Okay, yeah.
When Australian nationalism was on the rise.
Right, so suddenly they're kind of embracing that rebellious streak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Kelly, the son of Irish immigrants who challenged the British established authority.
He's perfect for that.
He became this perfect folk hero.
Yeah.
A symbol of the underdog fighting for freedom and justice. Yeah.
And it was during this period that we saw this explosion of books, films, songs.
Everything.
Even a ballet.
A ballet.
About Ned Kelly.
Wow. I didn't know.
All drawing inspiration from his legend.
That's so cool.
You know, artists and writers were just drawn to his story, the drama, the moral complexities.
I can see why.
It's just a great story.
Yeah. Cool.
And he raises all these questions about power and justice and rebellion.
And those are questions that every generation has to grapple with, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's incredible.
It is.
But I'm still curious, like, why Ned Kelly?
Yeah.
There were other bushrangers, outlaws in that era.
For sure.
Why has he captured our imaginations in this way?
You know, I think it comes back to that duality we talked about.
Yeah.
That just continues to fascinate us.
Right, the hero and the villain all wrapped up in one.
Yeah, he was a criminal, but he was also a rebel.
Right?
He operated outside the law, but he exposed the flaws.
Yeah. The injustices within that law.
He made people think.
Yeah, exactly. And that makes him a compelling and relatable figure.
Yeah, even today.
Even today.
It's so true.
And if you look at the art and the literature that's been inspired by him, it's interesting, right?
Okay.
Because some works really emphasize his brutality.
Right.
While others romanticize his rebellion.
It's like there's something for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, depending on your perspective.
And I think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Each generation,
they
reinterpret his story through their own lens.
I love that.
They find new meaning, relevance in his life and legacy.
So it's almost like his story is this ongoing conversation.
I think so.
Right. Between the past and the present.
Yeah, a dialogue. It's a good way to put it.
It's a way for Australians to kind of grapple with their history and their identity.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
It's just such a fascinating story.
And that conversation shows no signs of stopping.
No, not at all.
It's going to keep going. So As we kind of reach the end of our deep dive here, I mean,
Yeah.
what's the final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
I want them to think about why Ned Kelly's story still resonates.
Okay, yeah.
Why does it fascinate us?
Yeah.
What does it say about our own values?
Right.
Our own relationship with authority, with rebellion,
It makes you
our own ideas of justice.
Yeah.
It's all right there.
It really is. It's a story that challenges us
Yeah.
to look beyond simple labels
Right.
of hero and villain.
It's not black and white.
Not at all. Right. It's recognizing that we all have these shades of gray in us.
Exactly. We're all complex. We
Yeah.
all have the potential for good and bad.
And it forces us to confront the complexities of history
For sure.
and to grapple with the uncomfortable truths that sometimes come up.
Yeah, it's not always pretty.
No.
But it's important.
I think ultimately his story reminds us that the past is never really past.
It shapes who we are, how we see the world, and I think most importantly, how we understand ourselves.
Couldn't agree more.
And by exploring stories like this,
Yeah.
by engaging in these difficult conversations,
Right.
we can gain a much deeper understanding of our own humanity.
Beautifully said.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive and that it's given you a new perspective on Ned Kelly and hopefully sparked your curiosity,
Yeah.
encouraged you to maybe explore this story a bit further on your own.
It's a fascinating story.
Yeah, and until next time.
See you then.